I thought I just had a cooling marriage, until a grocery receipt from a town I'd never visited fell from his wallet. Normal details started to skew, revealing an impossible truth. For 3 years, my husband lived a double life, supporting another family just a few hours away. What he didn't expect was that I wouldn't cry, I wouldn't beg, I would choose the one day they were all gathered Thanksgiving to walk in. My name is Amelia Robinson. For the last 3 years, I had defined myself by my ability to absorb shock, to smooth over the rough edges of the man I married, to be the accommodating, supportive, understanding wife. But tonight, standing in the silence of my own kitchen, I stopped absorbing. I stood motionless in the kitchen of our Westford Heights home. It was the house he'd chosen, in the neighborhood he'd approved of, painted in shades of beige and gray that he found appropriately neutral. But this kitchen, this was my space. And tonight, I had tried to fill it with celebration. The dining table was my masterpiece. Tapered ivory candles, the good china we never used, the linen napkins I had spent 20 minutes ironing. I had roasted a chicken, the skin a perfect, crisp mahogany, surrounded by thyme and roasted root vegetables. It was a meal meant to say, "Look at us. We are happy. I am successful." Today, at a luncheon filled with parents and district administrators, I had been awarded the Excellence in Teaching plaque from Horizon Meadows Learning Center. It was a tangible piece of proof that the last 10 years of my life, the long hours, the lesson planning on Sundays, the investment in other people's children had mattered. I was proud. I was, perhaps foolishly, desperate for him to be proud, too. The sound of the garage door sliding open didn't come until 9:30. He was exactly 3 hours late. The silence I had been sitting in was so profound that the mechanical groan of the door felt like a violation. When Ethan finally walked into the kitchen, the first thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't the smell of his downtown office, a mix of coffee and boardroom air. It was the stale, metallic, confined scent of his car, the smell of a long drive, not a long day at a desk. He didn't apologize. He didn't kiss my cheek. His eyes, which I once found compelling and sharp, swept across the dining table. He didn't see the celebration. He didn't see the effort. He saw, I realize now, an annoyance, a demand. He was loosening his tie when he spoke. His voice was flat, exhausted, and held an edge of contempt that had become frighteningly familiar. "From now on, Amelia, I will decide when we talk." I must have recoiled, my hand moving to the kitchen counter to steady myself. "What, Ethan, Stop crowding me," he said. He didn't look at me. He was looking past me, toward the hallway, toward his escape. "I just wanted to celebrate the award," I said, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. That's when he finally turned his gaze on me. It was cold. "The award," he repeated, as if tasting a bad word. "You don't get it, do you? I am trying to lock down the regional director position. I am managing million-dollar projects, dealing with logistics you can't even imagine. And you're, what?" He waved a hand dismissively at me, at the kitchen, at the chicken. "You're happy about a piece of wood from a PTA meeting." The injustice of it, the sheer, breathtaking cruelty, made my voice sharp. "It wasn't a PTA meeting, Ethan. It's my career." "Your career," he scoffed, a small, humorless laugh that didn't reach his eyes. "Amelia, we are not in the same league. We aren't even playing the same sport. Do you know what I'll make as director and you? You make, what, $48,000 a year teaching kids how to color inside the lines. We are not on the same level." It was a precise, calculated strike, designed to wound, a verbal confirmation of what his actions had been screaming for months. "You are less." He didn't wait for my response. He didn't care to see the impact of the blow. He simply shouldered his briefcase, walked down the hall to his home office, and closed the door. The click of the heavy oak latch was definitive. It was an exclamation point on his statement. I was left alone in the dining room, standing next to a cooling carcass and candles burning down to puddles of wax. The silence he left behind was heavier and more absolute than the silence before. I stood there for a long time, Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 30. The old Amelia, the one who existed just 3 hours ago, would have dissolved. She would have wept. She would have knocked on that oak door, apologizing for her timing, apologizing for her small, insignificant award, begging for a moment of his time, for a scrap of the affection she used to know. But I didn't cry. I didn't feel the familiar hot sting behind my eyes, the tightness in my throat. I felt nothing, or rather, I felt something new. It was a sensation that started in my chest and spread outward, a thin, hard, perfect layer of ice forming over a deep, dark lake. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. He wanted me to stop crowding him. He wanted me to understand we weren't in the same league. Fine, I decided, in that moment of absolute, cold stillness, that I would give him exactly what he had asked for. I turned back to the kitchen. My hands were steady. I took the linen napkins I had ironed and folded them, placing them back in the drawer. I blew out the candles, one by one, the wicks hissing in their own wax. Then, I picked up the heavy ceramic platter holding the roasted chicken. I walked to the trash can, stepped on the pedal, and scraped the entire beautiful bird into the bin. The garlic mashed potatoes followed, the green beans almondine. I scraped his clean, untouched plate, and then my full one, onto the growing pile of wasted effort. I took the 2 wine glasses I had set out and placed them back in the cabinet. I retrieved the bottle of Cabernet we had been saving, a ridiculously expensive one his parents had given us, the kind you save for a milestone. I uncorked it with a steady hand. I walked to the stainless steel sink, and I poured the entire, deep red bottle down the drain. The gurgling sound as it disappeared was the only noise in the house. It was a ritual, a cleansing, an end. I didn't go upstairs to the master bedroom that night. I didn't even pause at the foot of the stairs, where the carpet was worn from my nightly ascent. I walked to the guest room at the far end of the hall, the one we kept for guests who never came. I pulled the comforter back, brushed my teeth in the adjacent bathroom, and turned the lock on the door. It made a quiet, solid snick. It was a new boundary, a line drawn in steel to match the oak door he had closed between us. I lay in the unfamiliar bed, the mattress too firm, the air too still. He had demanded silence. He had demanded distance. He thought he was punishing me. He had no idea how much silence I was capable of. He didn't know how far I would let him go. And he certainly had no idea that my silence would be the thing that led me, 8 weeks later, to a Thanksgiving table he never, ever wanted me to find, lying in the guest room. The ticking of the clock on the bedside table was offensively loud. It was 4 a.m. I hadn't slept, but I wasn't tired. That layer of ice inside me had hardened, insulating me. The man who closed his office door on me last night wasn't an aberration. He was the product of 1,000 small, almost invisible cracks in the foundation of our life, cracks that I had meticulously plastered over, day after day. The closed door wasn't the start. It was just the end of my denial. The real shift had started months ago, perhaps 6 or 8. Ethan's work at Marshall Price Developments had always been demanding. I understood that. I had supported that. But demanding had changed. It had mutated into secretive. He started getting late in ways that felt wrong. It wasn't just traffic late. It was lost time late. He'd leave at 7 a.m. and I wouldn't hear from him again. Not a text, not a call. My own messages. Hey, thinking of you, or the practical, do you want chicken or fish for dinner? Would sit, unread, for hours. Then, around 7:30 p.m., a text would appear. Brutal day, just getting out of a site meeting. When I'd ask where the site was, his answers were always vague. Out east, that new suburban build, and his favorite, the one that covered all manner of sins, an out-of-state survey. He'd come home smelling not of the office, but of that same stale car air I'd noticed tonight, a weariness on him that seemed deeper than just work. And I, like the dutiful wife I was programmed to be, accommodated. I kept his dinner warm in the oven. I'd sit at the kitchen table grading 4th-grade math papers, listening for the sound of the garage door. I managed the house. I paid every bill, balanced the checkbook, filed our taxes, handled the insurance. I did it all. Because Ethan was the visionary, and I was, as he once put it, so good at the details. I was the one who maintained the facade. Every Sunday, I baked, usually a coffee cake or his mother's preferred lemon poppy seed loaf. I'd drive it over to his parents' house, sit in their overly formal living room, and accept their passive-aggressive hospitality. The Marshalls. They had never fully approved of me. In their eyes, Ethan, with his sharp suits and his MBA, had married beneath him. I was just a school teacher. His mother, Eleanor, had a way of complimenting me that always felt like an incision. "Amelia, what a practical dress," she'd say, her eyes scanning me. "It's so durable." His father was more direct, especially after a few scotches. "Ethan is going places," he'd said to me at our last family barbecue, clapping his son on the back. "He's on the director track. A man like that. He needs a wife who can really entertain. Someone who presents well." The implication was clear. I, who spent my days with glue sticks and spelling bees, was not that woman. They seemed to forget, or perhaps they never knew, that their visionary son wouldn't have his MBA without my durable pragmatism. I thought about it often, in the quiet hours, those first 3 years of our marriage. Ethan was in graduate school, and I was the one pulling the weight. I worked my full-time teaching job. I gave up my summers to teach remedial reading programs, 4 nights a week. I drove to a tutoring center and worked with high schoolers struggling with their SATs. I paid for his books. I paid for his tuition fees. I paid the rent on our tiny apartment. I did it gladly. I did it because I believed in us. I believed we were a team. I was investing in our future. Now, that investment felt like a swindle. The small signs of his detachment had been accumulating like dust in the corners of our life. He'd forgotten our anniversary, our 4th. I'd waited all night, assuming he was planning a surprise. The surprise was that he'd genuinely forgotten. He'd come home after 11, saw the single candle I'd lit on the table, and said, "Oh, hell." That was today, wasn't it? His social media, once filled with pictures of us hiking or at dinners, had become a sterile showcase of his professional life. There were plenty of photos of him in a hard hat at a groundbreaking, a photo of him accepting a regional design award, but the last photo of me was from 2 Christmases ago. I had been erased, replaced by concrete and steel, and I had excused it all. He's under pressure, I told myself, pouring myself a solitary glass of wine. The director position is a huge responsibility. He's just tired. Men need their space. I can't be clingy. I had become a master of internal apology, of justifying his neglect until it seemed almost logical. Until tonight. That's why the teaching award had felt so important. It was my name on the plaque. It was my achievement, separate from him, from his family, from his ambition. It was a small, solid thing in my hands that said I was good at something, that I mattered. I had wanted, so desperately, for him to look at it and see me, to see the woman he'd married, not the detail manager he'd demoted me to. Instead, he'd taken my small victory and used it as a weapon. He'd held it up, measured it against his own trajectory, and declared it worthless. $48,000 a year. He'd spat the number out like it was pocket change, a rounding error in his grand, important life, in that cold guest room. I finally allowed myself to see the truth. This wasn't a temporary lapse. This was a calculated dismantling. He wasn't just distant. He was dismissive. He wasn't just tired. He was contemptuous. The core of our marriage, the fundamental, non-negotiable requirement of respect, was gone. And when respect is gone, love is just a ghost that haunts the rooms. When respect is gone, everything else is a lie. I replayed the last few months, but this time, without the excuses, a new memory, a small, jagged detail, surfaced. It was about a month ago. A Tuesday, he'd claimed to have an all-day local strategy meeting at the municipal building. He'd kissed me on the forehead, his lips dry, his eyes already focused on the day ahead. He'd forgotten his briefcase. I'd noticed it 10 minutes later, grabbed it, and run out to the driveway to catch him. He was already in his car, the engine running. As I ran up to the driver's side window, he sighed, annoyed at the interruption, but I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at his windshield. Tucked in the upper right-hand corner was an e-pass transponder. We didn't need one. The local tolls in our area used a different, sticker-based system. This pass was white, with the blue logo of the Turnpike Authority, the one that runs east, across the state line. "You forgot this," I'd said, handing him the briefcase. "Right, thanks," he'd said, taking it, his eyes averted. "Where did the new pass come from?" I'd asked, lightly. "Oh, it's from a rental, for the site visits." "They must have left it in," he'd said, a little too quickly. He'd put the car in reverse before I'd even stepped back onto the curb. He came home that night, complained about city planners, and the incident dissolved. I had accepted the flimsy explanation because I'd wanted to. Now, I knew. It wasn't a rental car's pass. It was his. A cold, sharp clarity settled over me. He wanted me to believe we weren't in the same league. He wanted me to stop crowding him. I sat up in the guest bed. The sun wasn't even up yet, but my mind was bright. If he didn't need me close, if he was so determined to push me away, then I would use the space he'd created. I would finally have the time and the will to look very, very closely at the life he was living. My alarm went off at 5 a.m., a full hour before our usual wake-up time. The sound, a shrill beep, was for me and me alone. I swung my legs out of the guest bed, my feet hitting the cold floor, and didn't snooze. I walked to the kitchen in the pre-dawn darkness, the house still and silent. I switched on the small light above the coffee maker. I pulled out my mug, the blue ceramic one a student had given me, and placed it under the spout of the Keurig. I selected one pod. The machine whirred, sputtered, and filled the single cup. I wrapped my hands around the warmth and breathed in the steam. For the past 3 years, my morning ritual had been dictated by him. It involved his preferred French press, grinding the beans just so, timing the steep, and preparing his 3-egg white and spinach omelet. His clean breakfast, he called it. I heard the floorboards creak upstairs just as I was finishing my last sip. Right on time, I rinsed my mug, placed it in the dishwasher, and walked out of the kitchen. I was in the guest room, pulling on my running leggings. When I heard him come downstairs, I heard the kitchen light flick on. There was a long pause. I could picture him standing there, in his boxers and t-shirt, staring at a clean counter, at a cold stove. I heard the refrigerator door open, a rustling of containers, a frustrated sigh. The refrigerator door closed, a little too hard, then the pantry door, more rustling. He was looking for the granola bars I usually kept stocked, but which we'd run out of 3 days ago. I had not replaced them. Finally, I heard the Keurig start its noisy cycle. He hated the Keurig. He said it tasted like plastic. I tied my running shoes, my back straight. I felt a small, bitter smile touch my lips. He was confused. He was inconvenienced. But his pride, that massive, fragile thing he protected at all costs, wouldn't allow him to walk to the guest room and ask, "Where is my breakfast?" He had drawn the line. He couldn't now complain that I was respecting it. I grabbed my keys and my gym bag and left through the front door, just as the sun was starting to bleed pink into the gray sky. My gym was a 20-minute drive, but I was there by 5:30 a.m., walking onto the treadmill. I put in my headphones, turned the music up loud, and I ran. I ran until my legs burned and my lungs ached, until the layer of ice inside me felt, for a moment, like a fire. This was the new pattern. I had spent years shrinking my life to fit into the spaces he left for me. I declined lunch invitations from other teachers because I needed to run to the grocery store. I said no to after-work drinks because I had to get home to start dinner. I skipped weekend workshops because he needed a quiet house to work or, more often, to decompress. No more. That first day, Sarah, The third-grade teacher, whose room was next to mine, poked her head into my classroom at lunch. "Hey, Amelia?" "A few of us are grabbing salads at the crate. You in?" "Usually." I'd smile, hold up my Tupperware of leftovers, and say, "Rain check. I've got to get these papers graded." This time, I stood up and grabbed my purse. "I'd love to," I said. "Let me just grab my coat." The look of surprise on her face was almost comical. We sat at a high-top table, the four of us, and we talked about a difficult parent, a new literacy program, and a terrible blind date. It was light, it was easy, it was normal. When the district curriculum head sent out an email an hour later about a Saturday workshop on integrating tech in the classroom, I replied, "Count me in," before I could second-guess it. My energy, once entirely focused on anticipating and managing Ethan's moods, was now my own. I was reclaiming it, one interaction at a time. That night, instead of driving straight home, I pulled over and sent a text to my younger sister. "Lena, dinner tonight, 8 p.m. at Luigi's." Her reply was immediate. "Everything okay, Ethan out of town?" I typed back, the words feeling sharp and true. "No, I just don't have to cook for anyone tonight." "On my way," she replied. The next crucial step happened during my lunch break on Friday. I drove to a branch of a completely different bank, one on the other side of the city, in a neighborhood I never frequented. It was an old-school building with marble columns and tellers who looked like they'd been there for 30 years. It felt secure. I sat down with a woman named Ms. Peters and used my paycheck to open a new, individual checking and savings account. I filled out the direct deposit forms, diverting a small, almost unnoticeable percentage of my $48,000 a year salary into this new, secret, private fund. I set up all the alerts to go to a new email address I had created that morning. No paper statements, nothing mailed to the house. When Ms. Peters handed me my new, crisp debit card, it felt heavier than a house key. It felt like an escape hatch. At home, I bought a simple, black and white composition book, the kind my students used. I kept it tucked inside a box of old tax returns in the guest room closet, and in it, I started to write. I didn't write feelings. I didn't write about my anger or my disappointment. I wrote facts. October 14th, Ethan home, 8:40 p.m., reason. Site inspection ran late. Smell car interior, not outside air. October 16th, Ethan home, 9:15 p.m., reason. Dinner with a potential client. Note credit card statement shows a charge for 1, not 2. At the steakhouse. October 17th, Ethan did not come home. Reason. Out-of-state survey, staying in a motel near the site. I was building a case. Though I wasn't sure for whom, it just felt necessary. The act of documenting his lies was an anchor, keeping me from drifting back into the fog of my old excuses. The strangest part of this new, Cold War was the shift in his behavior. My silence, my perfect, accommodating, absolute silence, was unnerving him. He had asked me to stop crowding him, but he hadn't realized how much of his life was held up by my constant, invisible support. His calls started on the third day. He called my phone at 11 a.m., right in the middle of my reading block. I saw his name flash on the screen, silenced it, and put it back in my desk drawer. He called again at 2:30 p.m. during my prep period. I let it ring. A text appeared. "Why aren't you answering your phone?" I waited until 3:15, when my students had all been dismissed. I called him back. "Hi, is everything okay?" I asked, my voice light, professional, the voice I used with concerned parents. "Why didn't you pick up?" he demanded. There was an edge to his voice, irritation. "I was teaching. Ethan," I said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I can't take personal calls when I'm with my students." "You always have before," he shot back. "Yes, well," I said, gathering my papers. "You were right. We need better boundaries. You're busy. I'm busy. I'm just respecting the rules you set. I'll see you at home tonight." And I hung up. I was getting lighter. With every meal I didn't cook for him, with every text I didn't send, with every act of self-preservation, I felt the crushing weight of his expectations lifting. I realized, with a startling lack of emotion, that I was not heartbroken. My husband, the man I had loved, or at least the man I thought he was, had been gone for a long time. I was just in the habit of being his wife, and habits, as any fourth-grade teacher knows, can be broken. The proof of his carelessness, the crack in his carefully constructed facade, came a week after the disastrous award night. It was a Tuesday. I had just gotten home from the gym. He was home early, for once, pacing in the living room, on his phone, arguing with someone about supply chain and deadlines. He was stressed. He was distracted. He threw his expensive wool overcoat, the one I had bought him for his birthday last year, carelessly over the back of a dining room chair as he stormed into his office, slamming the door. That night, I slept in the guest room as usual. He never came out. The next morning, the coat was still there, a slumped, gray shadow on the chair, a violation of the neat, orderly house I maintained. I went to pick it up, to hang it properly in the hall closet. It was a reflex, the last vestige of the wife I had been. But as I lifted the heavy wool, something fell out of the side pocket. It wasn't a wallet. It wasn't keys. It was a crumpled, bright white piece of thermal paper, a receipt. I smoothed it out on the dining room table. It was from a supermarket. Cedar Ridge Market, the top read. I'd never heard of it. I looked at the date the day before yesterday, Monday, the day he'd supposedly been in all-day local meetings. I scanned the list of items: milk, whole, bread, wheat, a box of dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets, a small pack of diapers, size 4, and at the bottom, a 20-pound frozen turkey. I stood there, the receipt in my hand. Cedar Ridge. I pulled out my phone, my fingers typing the name into the map application. A red pin dropped onto a town, 2 hours away. Cedar Ridge, 2 hours, 120 miles, give or take. Not a local meeting. I stood in the morning light of the dining room, the house silent. He was already gone, having left before I'd even returned from the gym. His uneaten granola bar he'd bought his own box, finally left on the counter like a small, sad statement. The receipt felt thin and flimsy, but it carried the weight of a stone. Dinosaur chicken nuggets, diapers, size 4, and a 20-pound turkey. This wasn't a list for a man on a business trip. This wasn't a quick stop for a lonely traveler. This was a list for a family. This was a stock-up for a home. The turkey, especially, felt like a slap. It was a holiday purchase, a planning purchase. My hands were steady. The ice inside me wasn't melting. It was sharpening. I walked into his office. The room was immaculate, just as he liked it. His desk was clear, his monitor dark, but I wasn't here for his desk. I was here for the shared iPad, the one we used for the family, which really meant it was a media controller for the living room and a place where our calendars and accounts coexisted. I sat in his expensive leather chair, the one that supposedly cost $800, and I started to work. First, I pulled up our shared family email. I searched Cedar Ridge. Nothing. Of course not. He wasn't that stupid, but he was arrogant, and arrogance breeds carelessness. I searched for the date on the receipt. Monday, October 20th. My eyes scanned his sent items for that day. Nothing. I checked the week before, and there it was. An email to me, sent 2 weeks prior. Subject heads-up conference. Amelia, just found out I have to be at the regional planning conference. It's a 3-day thing, all day Monday. Won't be back until late. Don't wait up. A 3-day conference. A conference that, according to his receipt, had a supermarket inside the main hall that sold frozen turkeys and diapers. The lie was so bald, so lazy. It was insulting. He hadn't just lied. He hadn't even bothered to craft a good lie. He was counting on me to be the dutiful, incurious wife who was too busy grading papers to pay attention. He was counting on the woman I had been, not the woman I was becoming. The next step was the car. He was proud of his car. A new Ford Explorer, top of the line. It was synced to everything. His phone, the house Wi-Fi, and foolishly, to the Ford Pass app on this very iPad. He'd set it up to show me, months ago, how he could remote start the car on a cold day. He'd left himself logged in. I opened the app. It took a moment to connect. And then, a map populated the screen. It showed the car's current location, the parking garage of his downtown office. But I wasn't interested in the present. I tapped Journey History. A list of trips appeared. Home to office, office to home to parents' house, and then a cluster of trips that stood out. Home to Cedar Ridge. Not just once, not twice. It was a recurring destination, at least twice a week, for the last 6 months. The trips were always in the late afternoon, and the return journey was always after midnight, or in some cases, the next morning. I tapped one of the addresses. The map zoomed in. It wasn't a convention center. It wasn't an office park. It was a quiet, suburban cul-de-sac. A street called Willow Creek Place. The app even showed the satellite image, a neat, 2-story colonial with blue siding and a perfectly manicured lawn. My breath hitched. Just for a second. This was a house, a family home. I saved the address. I took a screenshot of the journey log. I saved it to a new, secure folder on the iPad, one he would never look in. Then, I opened the Amazon app. We shared the account. He bought his protein powder and electronics. I bought books and household supplies. It was a mundane, digital portrait of a marriage. I went to my account and clicked on Your Addresses. There was our home address, listed as default. There was his office address. There were his parents' and my parents' addresses. And then, there was one more. Sabrina Lowe, 14. Willow Creek Place, Cedar Ridge. State 12903. Sabrina Lowe. The name was unfamiliar. It didn't sting. It was just data, a piece of the puzzle. Sabrina Lowe at 14 Willow Creek Place. The same address from the car's GPS. I clicked on View Order History. I filtered by Ship to this address. The list that loaded made my stomach clench. It wasn't just an affair. An affair is spontaneous. An affair is messy. This was structured. A toddler's bed rail, delivered 3 months ago. A high chair, delivered last year. A series of subscribe and save orders for baby formula. The same brand, every month, for almost 2 years. A woman's winter coat, a different size than mine. A set of picture books, a tricycle. He wasn't just visiting a mistress. He was funding a life. He was building a life. He was my husband. But he was her. What her provider? Her partner. I needed to be certain. The name on the address was just Sabrina Lowe, but the lie was deeper. I could feel it. I went to our shared bank account online. I knew his login. I had set up his login. I searched the transaction history. I wasn't looking for dinners or hotels. I was looking for something bigger, something contractual. And then I found it. A recurring payment. The first of every month. For $1,500. The memo line was blank. A simple transfer. But there was another one. A single payment. Made 3 months ago. It was for $3,200. Made out to Cedar Ridge Bright Beginnings. A quick search confirmed it, a preschool. This was it. This was the final, hard piece of evidence. I picked up my phone, my hands perfectly still, and I called the bank. I used the voice I used for difficult parents, calm, clear, and unshakable. "Hello," I said. "I'm calling about a charge on my husband's and my joint account. I'm just trying to verify it for our taxes." I gave them the date and the amount. The customer service representative put me on hold. When she came back, her voice was cheerful. "Yes, ma'am, I have that. It was the fall tuition payment for, looks like, Maya Lowe Marshall." My heart stopped, not with pain, with impact. Lowe Marshall. He hadn't just given them his money. He had given them his name, a hyphenated name, the careless, arrogant mistake of a man who was juggling 2 lives and had let them bleed into each other on a tuition form. A child. A daughter, with his name attached. The diapers, the toddler bed rail, the preschool. I thanked the woman and hung up the phone. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I sat in his $800 chair and I did the math. The formula orders, the high chair, the diapers. This wasn't a 3-month fling. This was a 3-year-old child, maybe more. I methodically went through every account. I took screenshots. I printed the Amazon order history. I printed the bank statements. I printed the GPS logs. I put every single sheet of paper into a large manila envelope. I was no longer a wife. I was a researcher. I was an archivist of my own betrayal. He wasn't just cheating, he was living a parallel life. And in that moment, his words from that night echoed back to me. We are not in the same league. We are not on the same level. It hadn't just been a cruel insult meant to silence me. It was his justification. It was the internal monologue of a man who needed to believe his wife was less than, in order to justify the more than he was building somewhere else. He'd had to tear me down, reduce me to my $48,000 a year salary, to make his betrayal permissible in his own mind. He was building a family he thought was worthy of his new director-level status, while leaving the starter wife, the durable, practical one, at home to pay the bills and keep the facade clean. I knew, with chilling certainty, that I couldn't just confront him. A confrontation would lead to lies, to gaslighting, to promises he would never keep. He would say she meant nothing. He would say the child was a mistake. He would beg. No, this wasn't about him begging. This was about him paying. I needed one more thing. I needed to see it. I needed visual proof. I needed pictures. I closed every app, cleared the browser history, and put the iPad back on its charger, exactly as I'd found it. I stood up and looked at our shared calendar, the one hanging on the kitchen wall, still blissfully blank for the coming weeks. But I knew his real calendar was on the iPad. I opened it again. I tapped on his work calendar, the one he thought was private but was synced to the cloud. I scrolled forward. October was busy with meetings and site visits. I scrolled to November, and there it was. Thursday, November 27th, an all-day event. Thanksgiving. Sabrina's parents' place, 2 p.m. My eyes fixed on the screen. Sabrina's parents' place. He wasn't just meeting her. He wasn't just seeing his child. He was meeting her parents. He was spending a major family holiday with them, as a unit, as a son-in-law. My gaze locked on that one. Single word. Parents. A cold, slow-burning rage finally began to melt the ice. He was taking my husband, the man I had built, the man whose MBA I had funded with my own sweat, and he was presenting him to another family, at a Thanksgiving table, as their own. I saved the screenshot. The manila envelope felt heavy in my hands, a physical weight that matched the density of its contents. I was not a woman walking into a lawyer's office. I was a researcher presenting a thesis. I had not chosen a soft-focus family lawyer from a suburban office park, the kind who advertised amicable dissolution on park benches. I had spent 2 nights, in the guest room, illuminated only by the glow of the iPad, searching the State Bar Association records. I was looking for a shark, and I found one. Patricia Halliday. Her office was on the 32nd floor of the tallest glass building in the city, a place that screamed billable hours. Her website bio was 3 sentences long and mentioned forensic accounting and high-asset marital fraud. She was perfect. I had called in sick to Horizon Meadows, the first time in 5 years. I sat across from her in a chrome and black leather chair, in a room that smelled faintly of lemon and money. Patricia herself was in her late 50s, with sharp gray hair cut into a severe geometric bob. She wore a black suit, a white silk shell, and a single, heavy gold bracelet. She did not offer me coffee. She did not ask me how I was feeling. "You said on the phone you had documentation," she said, her voice a smooth, deep alto. "My time is expensive, Mrs. Marshall. Please be efficient." "I will be," I said. I opened the clasp on the envelope. I did not cry. I did not allow my voice to waver. I was a teacher presenting a lesson plan. I slid the first document across the polished ebony desk. The Cedar Ridge Market receipt, dated October 20th, note the diapers, size 4, and the 20-pound frozen turkey. Patricia raised one perfectly waxed eyebrow. I slid the next stack across. Printouts from the Ford Pass vehicle application. It logs his journeys. You will see recurring trips to 14 Willow Creek Place, Cedar Ridge, average 2, sometimes 3 times a week. The dates match the out-of-state survey lies I logged in this. I placed my composition notebook next to the stack. I continued. The Amazon order history, shipped to that address, under the name Sabrina Lowe. You'll see a high chair, a toddler bed rail, monthly subscriptions for baby formula, and various toys, all paid from our joint Amazon account. I pushed the final, most damning pile toward her. And here's the joint bank statement, showing a $3,200 payment to Cedar Ridge Bright Beginnings. I called the bank. They confirmed the payment was for a student named Maya Lowe Marshall. I sat back, my hands folded in my lap. The receipts for the formula and diapers go back almost 3 years. He's been running a parallel marriage. Patricia, not just an affair. Patricia Halliday leaned forward. She put on a pair of thin rectangular reading glasses and began to read. She was silent for a full 10 minutes, her eyes scanning, absorbing, connecting. She read my notebook. She read the bank statements. She tapped the receipt with one long, painted nail. Finally, she took off her glasses and looked at me. A small, thin, terrifying smile touched her lips. "Amelia," she said, dropping the Mrs. Marshall as if we were now partners in a venture. "Most women walk in here with a gut feeling and a single suspicious text message. You have walked in here with a prepackaged indictment. You have done my investigator's job, and you've done it better." She leaned back in her chair. "Here is where you stand. You are in a community property state. This isn't just infidelity. This is, as you correctly identified, a parallel life. He has been systematically diverting marital assets, money that is half yours. Money you earned by managing the household while he built his career to support a second family. This is dissipation of assets. It is financial fraud. The court, to put it mildly, will be incandescently angry. You are in an exceptionally strong position." "So, what's next?" I asked. "Do we file?" "We can," Patricia said, tenting her fingers. "We can file today. We can have him served by tomorrow. It will be messy. He will immediately be on the defensive. He will lie. He will lawyer up. He will try to hide the money, which he's already proven adept at. He will paint you as hysterical, and he will paint her as a mistake he was trying to fix. He will try to control the narrative." She paused, letting the silence build. "Or," she said, her voice dropping, "we can let his own arrogance do the work for us. You have a piece of information he doesn't know you have." "The calendar," I said. "Thanksgiving." Patricia's smile widened. "Thanksgiving, at her parents' house. He's not just hiding, he's performing. He's auditioning for the role of son-in-law. That room, Amelia, will be filled with her entire family, her mother, her father, her siblings, her aunts, a room full of witnesses." "You want me to go there?" I said. It wasn't a question. "He called you not in his league," she said, quoting from my notebook. "Men like that build their lives on images. The image of the powerful, successful husband at home. The image of the loving, doting, single father or whatever he told her at her house. The most effective way to win this is to detonate both images at the exact same time. If you walk into that room, you are not a hysterical wife. You are a legal fact. You are his first wife. You expose his lie to his new audience and his old audience simultaneously. He will have nowhere to hide. He will be flanked, and we will have him." A cold spike of something that was not fear, but a dark, powerful adrenaline went through me. "The children," I said, my voice quiet. "There's a 4-year-old, maybe a 1-year-old, the high chair, the diapers." This was the first time Patricia's expression softened, though only by a fraction. "This is the line. Amelia, you are not a monster. You are a wife who has been wronged. Your fight is not with those children. They are victims, just as you are. Your fight is not even with Sabrina Lowe. For all we know, he told her you were dead. Your fight is with him. Your target is his credibility and his bank account. So, what do? You walk in there, she said. And you are the teacher. You are calm. You are composed. You do not raise your voice. You do not cry. You introduce yourself. You state the date of your marriage. You state the facts of his deception. And you state, clearly, so that his new father-in-law can hear it, that you will be seeking full financial restitution for every cent he has stolen from your marital pot to fund this fantasy. You do not threaten. You inform. You aim every word at the adults. And you leave. We built the timeline. I would continue to live in the guest room. I would continue to be the silent wife. I would collect any new transactions. Then, the day after Thanksgiving, Patricia would file the dissolution petition, an emergency motion to freeze their assets, and a full accounting of my evidence. I left her office after writing her a check for a $5,000 retainer, drawn from my new, private bank account. My next stop was not home. It was Maple Crest Lofts, a new, sterile apartment building on the other side of town. It was the kind of place that specialized in short-term rentals for traveling executives or residents. It was completely anonymous. I used my new debit card to sign a 3-month lease on a furnished one-bedroom. I went home and packed a single suitcase, my best clothes, my toiletries, my passport, the teaching award plaque. I took it to the new apartment. It was my lifeboat. That night, I called my sister, Lena. We met for a drink at a dark bar she liked. "What's wrong?" she asked immediately. "You look different." "I am," I said. I looked her in the eyes. "Ethan is cheating." Lena's reaction was predictable. Her face darkened. "I'll kill him. That bastard. I never liked him." "Who is she?" "Lena," I said, putting my hand on her arm, stopping the torrent. "I need you to listen. It's not just cheating. It's structural. It's a whole other life. And I have a plan. It's a legal plan. I need you to be my exit strategy. If I call you and say the word now, I need you to come to the house. No questions asked. But until then, you say nothing. You do nothing. You don't text him. You don't look at him sideways. I need him to believe I'm the same, meek. $48,000 wife he ignores." Lena, to her credit, saw the ice in my eyes and just nodded. "Okay, structural. I get it. Just tell me when." At home, I completed my withdrawal. I stopped doing his laundry entirely. I stopped picking up his dry cleaning. I stopped restocking the fridge with his preferred snacks. The house, once a perfectly managed machine that ran on my invisible labor, began to break down. He ran out of clean shirts. He couldn't find the car keys. He complained that the house was a mess. "I know," I replied, not looking up from the book I was reading in the guest room. "You demanded I stop crowding you, so I have." He thought I was a mild-mannered teacher. He thought I was soft. He forgot that my entire job is about order, about documentation, about consequences. He forgot that I know how to write an incident report. He forgot I know how to build a file. And he forgot that I, more than anyone, know what a deadline means. That Saturday, I told Ethan I was leaving early for the integrating tech in the classroom workshop. It wasn't a complete lie. The workshop was happening. I was just not attending. I signed up, paid the fee, and collected the digital materials to prove my attendance, just in case he checked. He didn't. He grunted from the master bedroom he had moved back in there. While I remained in the guest room, a fact that seemed to bother him more than the actual distance, and rolled over. My hands were steady on the steering wheel. I drank my single cup of coffee, the one I'd made just for me, in the car. The drive to Cedar Ridge was 128 miles, and I did it in just under 2 hours. I didn't speed. I didn't play music. I just drove. The manila envelope with Patricia's card on the passenger seat. A grim companion. Cedar Ridge was exactly what I expected. It was a newer, cleaner, more optimistic version of our own neighborhood. The trees were younger, the houses were larger, and the lawns were a more uniform shade of green. It was the kind of place Ethan had always said he'd aspired to. The next level up, I found Willow Creek Place. It was a perfect, quiet cul-de-sac. The kind where kids could leave their bikes on the lawn. I drove past number 14, a two-story colonial with blue siding and a cheerful red door. Just as the GPS had shown, there was a small plastic climbing structure in the side yard. I didn't park in front. I wasn't a fool. I continued around the curve, parked 2 streets over, and walked back, my phone in my coat pocket, my keys clutched in my hand. I found a spot on the sidewalk with a clear view of the house, partially obscured by a large, mature oak tree. I was just another suburban woman out for a Saturday morning walk. I waited. For what? I wasn't sure. A part of me, a small, stupid, hopeful part, thought the house might be empty, that it was all a complex financial fraud, a shell company. But at 10:30 a.m., Ethan's black Ford Explorer, the one I had the app for, pulled into the driveway. He wasn't wearing a suit. He wasn't in his important work clothes. He was wearing a soft gray flannel shirt I had never seen before, dark wash jeans, and sneakers. He looked younger. He looked relaxed. He looked happy. He got out of the car and went to the back. Opening the hatch, he pulled out 2 large paper bags filled with groceries. He balanced them on his hip, just as I'd seen him do 1,000 times. Before he could even get to the door, the red door flew open. A woman stepped out onto the porch. She was, as I'd guessed, in her early 30s. She had warm, light brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing yoga pants and a simple t-shirt. She was pretty, in a fresh, uncomplicated way. This was Sabrina Lowe. She smiled, a wide, genuine smile, and said something I couldn't hear. And then a little girl, a small, dark-haired whirlwind, ran out from behind her, yelling, "Daddy!" She couldn't have been more than 4 years old. She launched herself at Ethan's legs. I watched, frozen, from behind my tree. Ethan didn't flinch. He didn't look annoyed, the way he did when I asked him a question at the wrong time. He laughed. He set the groceries down on the porch step, bent down, and swung the little girl up into his arms. He kissed her on the top of her head. Then Sabrina stepped forward. She was holding a baby, a little boy, no more than 1, maybe 1.5, on her hip. Ethan, with the little girl still giggling in one arm, reached out with his free hand. He put it on Sabrina's waist. He leaned in, and he kissed her. It wasn't a peck on the cheek. It wasn't the chaste, dry kiss he sometimes gave me. It was a real kiss, a husband's kiss, a God, I'm glad to be home kiss. It was intimate and assured, and it lasted for 3 full seconds. When he pulled back, he smiled at her, then reached out and ruffled the baby's hair. "Hey, buddy." I heard his voice carry, faint but clear. He took the baby from her, settling the boy onto his other hip, a child in each arm, and nuzzled his face into the baby's neck. Sabrina picked up the groceries. They turned, as a unit, and walked into the red-doored house. The door closed. I stood by the tree. I was shaking. The tremor started in my hands and moved up into my arms, but I was not crying. My eyes were dry. My vision was sharp. I felt like I was watching a documentary, a nature film about a cuckoo bird that had stolen another's nest, except the cuckoo had built a second, better nest, and was thriving. This was the life he had stolen from me, piece by piece. The casual Saturday mornings, the children I had wanted, the flannel shirt, the easy domestic intimacy. He had taken all the energy, all the affection, all the husband he was supposed to be, and he had invested it here. I raised my phone. I didn't have to get close. The zoom was excellent. I took a picture of his car in the driveway, the license plate clear and damning. I took a picture of the house, number 14, with its blue siding. I walked, slowly, past the house, on the opposite side of the street, the toys in the yard, the tricycle, the small, plastic slide. I photographed them, and then I saw it. It was the detail that made the ice in my veins crackle. Hanging on the cheerful red door was an autumn wreath. It was tasteful, woven with burlap and artfully placed mini pumpkins, and hanging from the center was a small, wooden, laser-cut sign. It said, "Welcome to the Lowe Marshall family." Est. 2021. Low Marshall. He hadn't just given her his name on a tuition form, he had combined it with hers. They were a brand, a family, established, with a date. I took 3 photos of that wreath, making sure each one was perfectly in focus. This was not a mistress, this was a merger. As I was pocketing my phone, a woman walking her dog, a friendly-looking golden retriever, smiled at me as she passed. I smiled back. "Beautiful day," I said, my voice betraying nothing. "Isn't it?" she said. Just then, a different neighbor, a man, was backing his car out of the driveway 3 houses down. He saw Ethan, who had come back outside, presumably to get something else from the car. The neighbor rolled down his window. "Hey, Ethan," he called out. "Grill's on later if you and Sabrina want to bring the kids by." "Sounds great. Tom," Ethan called back, waving. "We'll see." My blood ran cold. Tom, Ethan. He wasn't a visitor. He wasn't a secret. He was Ethan to the neighbors. He was the man of the house, the one who gets invited to casual barbecues. He was fully, completely, and publicly embedded in this life. I turned and walked away, my pace quickening. I got back to my car, my heart pounding a different, harder rhythm. I sat in the driver's seat, my hands gripping the wheel. That's when I heard her voice. The dog walker had stopped to chat with Sabrina, who had come back out onto her porch. They were too far away for me to hear much, but I caught one devastating fragment. Sabrina laughed at something the woman said, adjusting her ponytail. "I know. I keep telling him. My husband is the only one who can get the grill to light." My husband. She didn't know. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. She wasn't a co-conspirator. She was a mark, just like me. He had told her a story. He was a widower. He was divorced. He was something, anything, other than what he was a married man. He had conned her just as completely as he had conned me. He had leveraged my stability to build her a fantasy. The anger I felt was so pure, so potent. It burned away the shaking. He was gentle with them. He was patient. He used a voice I hadn't heard in years. The voice he'd used when we were first dating. The one that made me believe he was a good, kind man. And he was using that voice to lie to everyone. To me, to her, to the neighbors, to his own children. He hadn't just compared me to his director-level job. He had compared me, his starter wife, to his new, upgraded family, and I had been found wanting. I sat there for another 10 minutes, watching the red door. I was no longer a victim. I was a witness. I put the car in gear and drove out of Cedar Ridge, obeying the speed limit. I did not look back. I stopped at a rest area halfway home. I took out my phone. I composed a new email to Patricia Halliday. Subject: visual confirmation. I attached the photos, one by one. The car, the house, the wreath, the long-distance shot of Ethan, Sabrina, and the 2 children on the porch. I labeled each one. I included a short, factual summary of my observations. 10:32 a.m. Subject arrived with groceries, dressed in casuals, greeted by Sabrina Lowe, 1 female child approx. 4 years, and 1 male child approx. 1.5 years. Subject kissed Lowe on the mouth, held both children. Address confirmed by neighbor Tom, who greeted subject by name. Wreath on door reads, "Welcome to the Lowe Marshall family." Lowe was overheard referring to subject as, "my husband." I hit send. I sat in my car, the engine off, in the sterile silence of the rest stop. My phone buzzed 5 minutes later. A reply from Patricia. It was 1 line. "Excellent. Stay calm. Thanksgiving will be the stage. The man who closes a door is in control. The man who is faced with a locked one is not." Ethan had been the one to close the door to his study, both literally and metaphorically. But now, he was finding every other door in the house closed to him, too. My silence, the one he had demanded, was no longer a reprieve for him. It was a mirror, and he did not like the reflection. It began with the texts. At first, they were demanding. Where are my blue shirts? Did you even buy groceries this week? The house is a mess. I did not reply. Then, they became confused. Are you getting these? We need to talk. Amelia, this is childish. The irony was so bitter it could have poisoned a well. The man who had told me we were not in the same league, who had demanded I stop crowding him, was suddenly desperate for my attention. His control was absolute only as long as I was the one pushing against his boundaries. The moment I stepped back, the moment I agreed to the distance he had created, he found himself alone in a chasm, and it terrified him. The phone calls started. He'd call me in the middle of my reading block, at 11:15 in the morning. I would silence the call, place the phone in my desk drawer, and continue explaining the difference between a main idea and a supporting detail to 24 9-year-olds. One afternoon, he showed up. I was outside on playground duty, the late November air sharp and cold. I was zipping up a little boy's jacket when I felt a presence behind me. I turned, and there he was. Ethan. He was standing on the asphalt, still in his expensive wool coat and his polished work shoes, looking profoundly out of place among the primary-colored jungle gyms. Amelia, he said, his voice low and urgent. We need to talk. This isn't working. What isn't working? Ethan? I asked, my voice perfectly neutral, the one I used for parents. Is there an emergency? This? He gestured between us, his frustration evident. You're not talking to me. You're sleeping in the guest room. You're gone. You're so distant. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I almost laughed. Instead, I pulled my whistle from around my neck and blew it. Okay, everyone. Line-up recess is over. The children, a chaotic wave of little bodies, thundered past us toward the school building. I turned back to him. I'm doing exactly what you asked, I said, my voice quiet, but as hard as the frozen ground. You told me you would decide when we talk. You told me to stop crowding you. So, I stopped. That's not what I meant, he hissed, his eyes darting around to see if any other teachers were watching. You're my wife. You're supposed to… What? I interrupted. To wait by the door, to keep your dinner warm, to accept that I'm not in your league. He flinched. He had thought that was a verbal kill shot, that it had done its job, and I had retreated, wounded. He had no idea it had been a key. Unlocking me. I am busy, I said, clipping my words. I have a class to teach. I walked away from him, leaving him standing alone by the swing set. What he didn't know was that his performance had a different audience in mind. This sudden, desperate need for connection, this panic about his distant wife, it wasn't about me. It was about Marshall Price Developments. I still had access to his calendar. The regional director interviews were scheduled for the first week of December. He was building his case, and a key part of the image for a director, a man who would be the stable, respectable face of the company was a stable, respectable home life. He couldn't have his wife sleeping in the guest room. He couldn't have her suddenly not performing the role of adoring, supportive spouse. My silence, my withdrawal, was a direct threat to his professional narrative. He was still operating under the assumption that I was just upset, that I was having a prolonged, silent tantrum. He had no idea that I had graduated from wife to investigator. He was still playing the part of the busy, important husband, and he just needed his emotional, slightly hysterical wife to get back in line. While he was busy panicking, I was busy relocating, every day. I took one small thing to the Maple Crest Lofts apartment. It was a slow, invisible evacuation. One day, it was a box of my winter sweaters. The next, my important documents, my passport, my social security card, my birth certificate. I packed my jewelry, the few good pieces my grandmother had left me. I took the framed photos of my family, leaving only the ones of him, of us. The apartment at Maple Crest Lofts was becoming a home, while the house in Westford Heights was becoming a hollow shell. I was becoming a ghost in my own life, and he was just now starting to notice. The climax of his panic came one night, about a week before Thanksgiving. I was in the guest room, reading. When he knocked, I didn't answer. He opened the door. He was wearing the flannel shirt. The gray one. The one I had seen him wear in Cedar Ridge. The sight of it, in my house, was so jarring I felt a flash of hot, white anger. He had brought the costume from his other life into mine. "Amelia," he said, his voice soft. The one he used to use when he wanted something. The one I'd heard him use on the porch with her. "What do you want?" "Ethan," I said, not looking up from my book. "I miss you," he said. He sat on the edge of the bed. It's been a tough few months. I've been under a lot of pressure. That director job. It's everything. I haven't been good to you. I know that." He was trying to reconnect. He was running the script. Apologize, vaguely, blame work, offer affection, reset the board. He reached out and put his hand on my leg. I closed my book. I looked at his hand, resting on my thigh, as if it were a spider. "Don't," I said. My voice was flat, empty of all emotion. "Amelia, come on," he murmured, moving closer. He tried to lean in, to kiss me. I stood up. So fast the book fell to the floor. "Get out." He stopped, stunned. This was not in his script. "What?" I said. "Get out," I repeated, my voice still quiet. But now it had a razor's edge. His face changed. The false, soft contrition vanished, replaced by the familiar, cold anger. "What is wrong with you?" he snapped. "I'm trying to fix this. I'm trying to be your husband, and you are just cold. You are acting like a cold, heartless bitch. Amelia." I picked up my book. I smoothed the cover. I looked at him, at his handsome, lying face, at the flannel shirt that belonged to another family. "You're right, Ethan," I said, my voice a whisper. "I am cold." I met his gaze. "But then, you're living two lives. I guess you just don't have enough warmth to cover me anymore." He stared at me, his brow furrowed. He was trying to parse the words, to see the trap. He couldn't. To him, it was just a strange, metaphorical insult. He had no idea it was a literal statement of fact. He stood up, enraged. Fine. You want to be cold. You want to be alone in here. Go ahead. But don't come crying to me when you realize what you've thrown away." He stormed out, slamming the guest room door. I locked it behind him. The next day, I went shopping. I didn't go to the mall. I went to the high-end boutique downtown, the one I never let myself walk into. I used my secret debit card. I bought a single outfit, a pair of charcoal gray, wide-leg wool trousers, a cream-colored silk blouse, and a sharp, structured, black blazer. It was an outfit that didn't ask for permission. It was an outfit that made statements. It was the armor I would wear. When I got home, there was an email from Patricia. The subject was draft. I opened it. It was the full 60-page divorce petition. It was all there, in stark, black and white legalese. Dissipation of marital assets, financial support of a non-marital family, tuition for one. Maya Lowe Marshall. Seeing it all typed out, filed with the court's letterhead at the top, made it real. It was a weapon, and it was ready. That night, Ethan was in the kitchen when I got home. He was trying to be normal. He was trying to pretend his outburst hadn't happened. "Hey," he said, sorting through the mail. "Just so you know, I have to be on site in Cedar Ridge over the holiday. A big concrete pour went bad. It's a whole thing." I just looked at him, my face a mask of calm. "Yeah," he continued, not meeting my eyes. "I'll have to go up there, Thanksgiving morning. I'll probably have to stay overnight." He was handing me the invitation. He was clearing the path. He was, as always, arrogant and careless, and so very, very predictable. "I see," I said, taking off my coat. "That's a shame." I walked past him, toward the guest room, toward my locked door. "Right," he said, to my retreating back. "Well, it can't be helped." I paused in the hallway. "No, Ethan," I said, without turning around. "It can't." Thanksgiving morning. I woke up at 7 a.m. in my apartment at Maple Crest Lofts. I had not slept there before, but it felt right to start the day from my new, clean, uncompromised space. I showered and dressed with methodical care: the gray wool trousers, the cream silk blouse, the sharp black blazer. I put on a pair of low, practical heels, my armor. I did my makeup, just enough to look polished, not enough to look like I was trying. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I didn't entirely recognize, but one I respected. She was not a victim, she was a delegate. I stopped at the best bakery in my new neighborhood and bought a $14 perfectly rustic pumpkin pie in a craft paper box, a prop, Patricia had called it, a gesture of normalcy that would grant me entry, a Trojan horse made of pastry. The 2-hour drive to Cedar Ridge was quiet. The highways were empty, as all of America was already where it was supposed to be. In kitchens, in front of televisions, with family. I did not listen to music. I listened to the hum of the engine and rehearsed my lines. Not the lines of an angry wife, but the lines of a public statement. I had my timing. 2 p.m. That was the invitation on his calendar. I arrived at 1:45. I didn't drive onto Willow Creek Place. I parked 3 streets over, just as I had before. I sat in the car for 10 minutes. I did not check my makeup. I pulled out my phone. I opened the folder I had labeled documentation. I looked at the photos, one by one. The wreath, Low Marshall family. The screenshot of the preschool payment, Maya Low Marshall. The long-distance shot of him kissing her. The baby on her hip. The 4-year-old at his knees. I stared at his face, the face of the relaxed, happy, doting husband. The face of a consummate liar. The ice inside me, which had been a quiet, steady cold, now felt sharp. It was a blade. I was ready. I got out of the car. Taking the pie box, I held it with one hand, my purse with my evidence in the other. I walked down the cleaned, quiet sidewalks, the air smelling of wood smoke and roasting turkey. As I turned the corner onto Willow Creek Place, I saw it. The house was not just occupied. It was overflowing. There were 3 cars in the driveway and at least 4 more parked on the street. A silver minivan with a proud grandparent bumper sticker, a flashy new truck, a college beater car with a university sticker on the back. This was not a quiet gathering. This was the full, extended family, American Thanksgiving experience. Her parents, her siblings, her cousins, a house full of witnesses, just as Patricia had predicted. I heard the sound of children laughing, a high-pitched shriek of joy from the backyard. I heard the muffled, rhythmic cheer of a crowd from a television, the sound of the Thanksgiving Day football game. I walked up the pathway, the red door looming. I did not hesitate. I did not falter. I was a guest, arriving with a dessert. I stood on the welcome mat, the one right under the Low Marshall family wreath. I took one deep, steadying breath, and I rang the doorbell. For a moment, there was just the sound of the chime, quickly drowned out by a shout from inside. "I'll get it." The door was flung open, not by Sabrina, but by a younger woman in her early 20s, perhaps a sister or a cousin. She was holding a wine glass and had a smear of flour on her cheek. She was flushed and happy. "Hi," she beamed, already moving out of the way. "Come on in. I think I know you from Sabrina's photos, but I'm terrible with names. I'm Chloe." She assumed I was one of them, a friend, a coworker. The house was too full, the party too chaotic, for her to even question my presence. "Amelia," I said, offering a tight smile. "Thank you. I brought this." I held up the pie. "Oh, awesome. Just put it on the table in the dining room. If you can find a spot," she said, already turning back toward the kitchen. "Mom, is the sweet potato casserole supposed to be smoking?" I stepped inside. I closed the door behind me. I was in a warm, crowded foyer. Coats were piled high on a bench. The smell of turkey, sage, and melting butter was overwhelming. The house was loud, filled with laughter, the roar of the football game, and the sound of at least 3 different conversations happening at once. And through the archway, into the open-plan living room, I saw him. He was the image of the perfect American patriarch. He was standing at the head of a long, beautifully set dining table, which was groaning with food. He was holding the baby boy, the 1.5-year-old, effortlessly on his hip. The child had his head nestled on Ethan's shoulder, fast asleep. With his free hand, Ethan was laughing at something an older man, Sabrina's father, no doubt had said. Sabrina herself was standing next to him, her hand on his back, looking up at him with an expression of pure, uncomplicated adoration. My husband, my children, my life, stolen and being worn by someone else. No one had noticed me. I was just another guest in a crowded room. I walked forward, my heels clicking softly on the hardwood floor. I walked past the living room, where 2 teenagers were playing a video game, ignoring the football game their uncles were yelling at. I walked toward the dining room. I was 10 feet away when Sabrina finally looked up and saw me. Her smile faltered, just a little, a flicker of confusion. She didn't know me. I was a stranger in her house. She leaned toward Ethan, to whisper, "Who is that?" But I didn't give her the chance. I stopped at the edge of the dining room. I had the attention of the table. The older man, Sabrina's father, looked at me, expectantly. I put the pumpkin pie down on the end of the table, right next to a silver gravy boat, and then I spoke. My voice was not loud. It was not angry. It was perfectly clear, perfectly calm, and it cut through the noise of the football game like a surgeon's scalpel. I am Amelia Robinson Marshall. The laughter in the room stopped. The chatter died, as if a switch had been thrown. I looked directly at Ethan. His face had gone from a warm, ruddy pink to a color I could only describe as gray. The smile was frozen, a grotesque mask. His arm, the one holding the sleeping child, seemed to tighten. I am Ethan Marshall's legal wife. Absolute, profound silence. The only sound in the entire house was the tinny, distant voice of the sports announcer on the television. What a play, unbelievable. He just broke through the line. Sabrina's face crumpled in confusion. She looked from me to Ethan, a desperate, questioning look. Ethan. What is she talking, Ethan? That one, reflexive look. That innocent, terrified plea for an explanation. It told me everything I needed to know. She was a victim, too. Ethan tried to speak. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a pure, primal terror I had never seen before. He, the man of 2 houses, the director in training, the master of 2 leagues, was cornered. Now, wait a minute, Sabrina's father said, his voice a low growl, standing up from his chair. What kind of joke is this? It's no joke, I said, my voice still calm. Amelia, Ethan finally managed to say. His voice was a croak. Amelia, everyone stay calm. This is a misunderstanding. A terrible misunderstanding. He was holding the sleeping baby like a shield. Is it? I asked. I reached into my purse. I did not pull out a weapon. I pulled out a stack of 4x6 glossy photographs. I saw his eyes lock onto them. He knew. This is a misunderstanding, I said, holding up the first photo, the one of the Low Marshall wreath. I held up the second, the one of him, kissing her, on this very porch, the entire room, 20 pairs of eyes, swung from me to him. They looked at the man who was just about to carve their Thanksgiving turkey, the man who was holding a sleeping child, and they saw, for the first time, the stranger in their midst. I placed the pumpkin pie I had brought and pushed it gently toward the center of the table, an offering to the chaos I had just unleashed. It sat there, next to the half-carved bird, an absurdity, a piece of evidence. I held the photographs in my hand, but I didn't pass them around. They were not for them. They were for him. I kept my gaze locked on Ethan. His face was a mask of waxy, panicked disbelief, the baby on his hip, sensing the tension, let out a small, sleepy whimper and started to fuss. Ethan, Sabrina whispered, her voice trembling. She took a step toward him. Who is this woman? I am his wife, I said, my voice projecting easily across the room. Ethan and I were married 3.5 years ago, on June 4th, in a ceremony with 200 guests. We live at 21 Ashton Drive in Westford Heights. I am a fourth-grade teacher at Horizon Meadows Learning Center. This man, I pointed, a simple declarative gesture, is my husband, legally, morally, and financially. Sabrina's father, a tall man with steel-gray hair and the clear look of a man who does not suffer fools, stepped forward. His eyes were not on me. They were boring into Ethan. "Ethan, is this true?" he demanded. Ethan couldn't speak. He just shook his head, a pathetic, jerky motion, as if trying to dislodge the words. It's complicated." "It's not complicated at all," I said. I was the teacher now, and this was my classroom. "Let me simplify it for you." I laid out the timeline, my voice as calm and rhythmic as if I were explaining a history lesson. For the first few years of our marriage, while I worked a full-time job and tutored 4 nights a week to help pay for his master's degree, he was, it seems, starting this. I gestured around the room, at the tasteful beige walls, at the happy family photos on the mantel. He was driving out here, to Cedar Ridge, on late work nights. He was taking out-of-state survey trips that were, in fact, just a 2-hour drive to this house. I saw Sabrina's hand fly to her mouth. She knew. She was remembering the lies, the excuses, the timelines, and they were all clicking into place, a terrible, intricate lock. "He told me," I continued, my voice hardening, "that I wasn't in his league, that my $48,000 a year salary was nothing. I suppose it felt like nothing, compared to the money he was spending here, money that, by law, is half mine." I looked at Sabrina's father. "Did you know that the down payment for this house was likely funded by our joint savings account? Did you know that the tuition for your granddaughter, Maya Lowe Marshall, at Bright Beginnings Preschool, is paid from our shared checking account?" A gasp came from an older woman at the table. Sabrina's mother. Sabrina herself just closed her eyes, her face as white as the tablecloth. She wasn't hysterical. She wasn't screaming. She was, I realized, just like me. She was absorbing the shock, the ice forming. She reached out and pulled the little 4-year-old girl, who was staring with wide, confused eyes, and held her tightly against her legs, shielding her. I made a conscious choice. I would not say the children's names again. I would not aim my words at them. My target was the man holding the carving knife. "He's lying," Ethan finally burst out. The baby in his arms was now crying, a full, panicked wail. He passed the child, almost roughly, to Sabrina. "Give me him. She's lying." We're separated. We've been separated for a year." The room, which had been frozen in horror, now looked at me, waiting for my response. They were looking for a crack in my story. "Separated?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Is that what you call it?" I reached into my blazer pocket, not for another photo, for my phone. "You and I must have a very different definition of separated, Ethan," I said. I unlocked the screen. I found the text thread. "Because just last month, on October 15th, you sent me a text." I held the phone up, and I read it, my voice clear and ringing. "Hey, on my way home, late meeting, want me to pick up Ty, the usual." I lowered the phone. Men who are separated for a year do not ask their wives if they want the usual Thai food. Men who are separated do not, as you did just last week, ask me why I wasn't connecting with them. The lie hung in the air, exposed and pathetic. It evaporated. Sabrina's father took another step forward. His face was now a dark, furious red. "You are married," he said, his voice a low, dangerous rumble, directed entirely at Ethan. "You are married, and you came into my house. You sat at my table. You called my daughter your wife. You put your name on my grandchild." I was going to fix it," Ethan stammered, his hands now empty, flapping uselessly at his sides. "I was going to tell her." Tell me what? Sabrina's voice was a whisper, but it was sharper than a shout. Tell me what? Ethan, that I'm the other woman that my children are what your secret? No, baby, no, it's not like that, he pleaded. Turning to her, he was now the man I recognized, the desperate, cornered, lying man, and I stepped in, back into my role. It is exactly like that, I said. I looked at the entire, assembled family. I am not here to fight over him. I am not here to take him back. He is damaged goods. You can have him. I let that sink in. I am here, I continued, because this is a financial matter. I am here to put this entire room on notice. My lawyer, Patricia Halliday, will be filing for divorce on Monday morning. Along with the petition, she will be filing a motion for the full, immediate, and retroactive reimbursement of all marital assets. Every dollar he spent on this house, every cent he spent on her car, every preschool payment, every Amazon order, every diaper. I turned to Sabrina. My voice was not unkind. It was just factual. I'm not here to yell at you. I'm here so you understand exactly who you've been living with, and more importantly, I'm here so you understand exactly whose money you've been spending. It was mine, and I am coming to collect it. Oh my God, a cousin whispered from the corner. He told us his ex-wife was, cold, that she lived out of state and just didn't care about him, that she didn't want kids. The betrayal had another, more vicious layer. He had not just erased me, he had defamed me. He had painted me as the barren, frigid wife to justify his warm, fertile, second life. Ethan looked around the room, his eyes wild. He was looking for an ally. He was looking for someone, anyone, who was still on his side. He had been the king of two castles, the master of two narratives, and in the space of 3 minutes, I had leveled them both. He was no longer the successful, doting husband-to-be at this table. He was a con man, a fraud. He was no longer the powerful director-level husband at my house. He was nothing. He had lost all power, all credibility. He was standing in a room full of people who had, just 5 minutes ago, loved and respected him, and now they were all looking at him with the same unified expression: disgust. He was a stranger in their house, a man with no standing, a liar exposed at the head of a feast he had no right to attend. The chaos I had detonated was swift. The baby was wailing. The 4-year-old, sensing her mother's terror, had buried her face in Sabrina's side and was crying silently. The football game was still, ridiculously, blaring on the television, a cheerful, violent soundtrack to the end of a life. Ethan, finally, moved. He lunged toward me, not to attack, but to plead. He grabbed my arm, the one in the black blazer. "Amelia, please," he hissed, his voice a desperate, terrified whisper. He was trying to pull me toward the foyer. "Not here. Not in front of the kids. Let's just go outside. We can talk about this. We can talk about this privately." I looked at his hand on my arm, this hand that had held another woman, that had held another man's children. I looked at it with such profound, cold disgust that he recoiled, his hand dropping to his side as if he'd been burned. "Privately?" I asked, my voice still loud enough for the entire, horrified room to hear. "You had your privacy, Ethan. You had 3 years of it. You made me look like a fool in private for 3 years. Today is the public version. You don't get to control the narrative anymore." "Get him out," Sabrina's father said. His voice was not a request. It was a command, heavy with a lifetime of authority. He was pointing a thick turkey-carving fork at Ethan. "Get out of my house." "John, wait," Sabrina's mother pleaded. "The food, the neighbors." "I don't care," the father, John, roared. "He is a liar, and he is a cheat, and he is not welcome at my table. Get your coat, and get out, son." The word son was a final, devastating insult. "But my car, my things." Ethan was sputtering, looking around at the life that was now rejecting him. "You can deal with that later," John said. "Right now, you are leaving." "Just one more thing," I said. I reached into my purse one last time. I pulled out a single, folded piece of paper, not a photo, a spreadsheet. "I wasn't sure if you'd try the separated lie." "Ethan," I said. So I had my bank run a certified list of all the direct transfers from our joint account to Sabrina Lowe's personal account. It's a very long list. It totals, well, quite a lot of money. Money my lawyer is very, very interested in. I didn't give the paper to Ethan. I placed it on the table, right next to the congealing gravy. I gave it to them, to Sabrina's family, a final, financial bomb drop, and that, finally, was what did it. That was what made Ethan understand the true scope of his ruin. He saw the paper. He looked at me. The desperation in his eyes vanished, replaced by a snake-like, familiar coldness. He had lost the room. He had lost the lie. Now, all he had left was his anger. "You," he whispered, stepping close to me. For a second, I thought he might strike me. "You're going to regret this, Amelia. You think you're so smart. You file that. You bring this to my company. I'll be ruined. Is that what you want? You'll be ruining yourself. You'll get nothing." It was the threat, the one Patricia had warned me about, the last gasp of a cornered man. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I delivered my final, memorized line, the one my shark of a lawyer had given me. "I've been advised to inform you, Ethan, that any and all attempts to threaten, intimidate, or otherwise obstruct this legal process will be recorded. This conversation is being recorded. If you threaten my financial future or my physical safety in any way, I will not hesitate to use it, both with the police and with the board of directors at Marshall and Price Developments. If you want to go down that road, I will walk you to the very end of it." His face, which had been contorted in rage, went slack. I had called his bluff. I had shown him I had a nuclear-level hand. He had nothing. He looked, one last, desperate time, at Sabrina. She was his last port, his other home. "Sabrina," he begged. "Baby, look at me. This is not what it looks like. She's a liar. She's crazy. We can fix this. I love you." Sabrina, who had been standing rock still, her arms a vice around her daughter, finally looked up. Her eyes were red, but they were not crying. They were just dead. She had been conned, and she knew it. She looked at this man who had built a 3-year life with her. She looked at his children, and then she looked at me. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was a moment of grim, universal understanding between two women who had been played by the same man. Then, she turned her dead eyes back to Ethan. "Get a divorce, Ethan," she said, her voice a hollow whisper that carried across the entire room. "Get a divorce, and then, after that, don't ever, ever speak to anyone in this room again." It was a final, clinical execution. He had not just been kicked out. He had been erased. He had no wife in Westford Heights. He had no family in Cedar Ridge. He was a man with 2 sets of car keys and no home. I had done what I came to do. I did not say goodbye. I did not offer a final, cutting remark. My work was done. I turned my back on him. I turned my back on the stunned, silent family. I turned my back on the cooling, uneaten turkey, the perfect pumpkin pie, the chaotic, ruined Thanksgiving table. I left them all there. A portrait of American Gothic horror. I left him to explain the unexplainable, to stand in the wreckage he had built, and to face, for the first time, 2 separate, simultaneous apocalypses. I walked out the red door. I did not run. I walked. I heard the door close behind me, the sound mercifully muffling the beginning of what I was sure was a new, fresh wave of shouting. I walked down the quiet suburban street, the air cold and sharp against my hot face. I got into my car. 3 streets over. I sat for 1 second. my hands on the wheel. Then, I pulled out my phone. I sent a one-line text to Patricia Halliday. "It's done. Proceed." A reply came back almost instantly. "Filing motion. Happy Thanksgiving. Amelia, go home." I started the car. I drove away from Cedar Ridge, my new apartment at Maple Crest Luefs, my true home, waiting for me. I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that the battle was over, but the war, the legal, financial, paperwork war, was just beginning, but it was a war I was now fully and completely prepared to fight. I glanced in my rearview mirror as I turned the corner, just in time for one last, perfect, cinematic shot. He was on the porch. Sabrina's father, John, was standing in the open doorway, his arms crossed, blocking him from coming back in. Ethan was standing on the welcome mat, under the low Marshall wreath. He had no coat. He had no car. He was just there, trapped on the porch between the two worlds he had built, both of which had just violently rejected him. He was a man with no league at all. I looked back at the road ahead. "He told me not to crowd him," I said, to the empty car. I had finally, perfectly obeyed. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below with your city or country so we can connect, and let me know what you thought. Please subscribe to Zoe Revenge Stories and like this video. You can also show your support by hitting that hype button, so this story can be heard by more people who need to know they're not alone.